The city woke up every morning in a rush. Cars filled the roads. People hurried to work, and tall buildings reflected the golden light of sunrise. In the middle of this busy world lived a man who had everything money could buy. His name was Daniel Harris, a well-known millionaire, respected, powerful, and admired by many. People looked at him and saw success. They saw expensive suits, luxury cars, and a life that seemed perfect from the outside. Daniel lived in a large penthouse high above the city. The windows showed a beautiful view, but the rooms inside were always quiet, too quiet. There were no laughs, no voices, no warmth, just silence. His mornings were the same every day. He woke up alone, drank his coffee alone, and checked his phone filled with business messages. No one asked him how he felt, and he never told anyone. He had worked very hard to reach this level. Coming from a poor background, Daniel had promised himself he would never struggle again. As a child, he had seen hunger, pain, and loss. He had lost his parents early and learned to survive on his own. That pain pushed him to work harder than everyone else. He built his business step by step, sacrificing friendships, love, and peace along the way. Now, years later, he was rich beyond imagination, but deep inside, something felt empty. He often ignored that feeling, telling himself that success was enough, that emotions were weakness, that money could solve everything. Yet every night, when the city lights blinked outside his window, the silence returned, heavier than before. Daniel moved through life like a machine, meetings, deals, handshakes, and smiles that meant nothing. People respected him, but no one truly knew him. Employees feared him, partners praised him, and strangers admired him from a distance. But no one sat with him at the dinner table. No one waited for him at home. One evening, after a long day of work, Daniel asked his driver to stop near one of the city's most expensive restaurants. He often ate there alone, sitting by the window, watching people pass by inside the restaurant. Soft music played and wealthy families laughed together outside. The street told a very different story. Through the glass, Daniel could see children selling flowers, old men begging, and tired women sitting on the pavement. He had seen scenes like this many times before. Usually he looked away, not because he hated them, but because he did not know how to face them. Their presence reminded him of a past he had buried deep inside. That night, however, something felt different. The silence inside him felt louder, heavier. He watched a little girl sitting on the sidewalk across the street. Her clothes were dirty, her hair messy, and her face thin. She looked no older than 6 or 7. She sat quietly, watching people eat inside the restaurant. Her eyes followed every plate of food, every bite. Daniel felt an uncomfortable feeling in his chest. He told himself it was nothing, just another sad scene in a big city. He turned his attention back to his meal, but his mind kept drifting. The laughter inside the restaurant sounded distant, almost fake, compared to the quiet hunger written on the girl's face. For the first time in years, Daniel questioned his own life. He had everything, yet felt nothing. The girl outside had nothing, yet her eyes still held curiosity and hope. That contrast disturbed him deeply. When he finished eating, Daniel stood up and walked toward the exit. The restaurant doors opened, and the noise behind him faded. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the city air felt colder. The street lights flickered, cars rushed past, and the little girl was still there. Daniel hesitated. He had never stopped like this before, never allowed himself to stand between his world and theirs. He did not know it yet, but this moment, this pause, was the beginning of a change he never expected. His world of wealth had always been loud with money and power, yet his heart had lived in silence for far too long. And that silence was about to be broken in a way no amount of money could control. The little girl had learned very early that the street did not care about age. The pavement was her bed, the sky her roof, and hunger her closest companion. She woke up every morning before the sun, not because she wanted to, but because the cold always found her first. Her name was Anya, though no one on the street ever asked for it. Names mattered in homes and schools, not on sidewalks. To the world, she was just another street child, invisible to most eyes. Anya spent her days near busy places, restaurants, markets, and traffic lights. She had learned that food lived where people gathered. She did not beg loudly like others. She simply watched, quietly, carefully. Her eyes followed faces, hands, and plates, learning who might be kind and who would turn away. Hunger was not a sharp pain anymore. It was dull, constant, like a shadow that never left her side. Some days she found leftovers. Some days someone gave her a piece of bread. And some days she slept with nothing but hope in her stomach. She remembered her mother's face. Though it was fading, her mother used to brush her hair with fingers instead of the comb and call her Mary John. Those memories were warm but dangerous, because remembering too much made the present hurt more. Her father had disappeared long before that, swallowed by sickness and bad luck, leaving her mother to fight alone, until she could not anymore. After her mother died, the world became very loud and very cruel. People shouted, pushed, ignored, and judged. Anya learned to stay quiet. Silence kept her safe. That evening, she sat outside the glass walls of a beautiful restaurant. The smell of food floated in the air, heavy and tempting. Her stomach twisted painfully. She pressed her hands against it, pretending it helped. Inside, she saw families laughing, children complaining about vegetables, plates being replaced before they were empty. She wondered what it felt like to eat without counting bites, to drink water without fear of running out, to sit at a table without being told to leave. Then she saw him. The man inside the restaurant did not laugh like the others. He sat alone, wearing clean clothes and a serious face. There was something different about him. Not kind exactly, but not cruel either. He looked lonely in a way she recognized. Anya watched him for a long time, longer than she watched anyone else. Something inside her felt brave and foolish at the same time. She did not know why, but her feet slowly moved toward the restaurant door. As the man stood up to leave, Anya's heart began to race. Fear filled her chest. Adults were dangerous, especially rich ones, but hunger pushed harder than fear. The doors opened, and the man stepped outside. The noise of the city rushed back in. Anya stood frozen for a second. Looking up at him, he was tall, clean, and distant like someone from another world. Her voice came out before her courage disappeared. Soft, shaky, but honest. "Daddy, can I eat with you?" The word slipped out naturally. She did not plan it. She did not understand it fully. But to her, daddy meant safety, warmth, someone who stayed. The man stopped completely. Time seemed to pause around them. Cars passed, people walked by, but neither of them moved. Anya saw his face change. His eyes widened slightly, then softened, then filled with something she could not name. She thought she had made a mistake. She thought he would shout or walk away like the others. Her hands trembled. She lowered her eyes, ready for rejection. Rejection was familiar. It hurt, but it did not surprise her anymore. But instead of footsteps moving away, she heard silence, heavy, uncomfortable silence. She slowly looked up again. The man was still there, looking at her like she mattered, like she was real. In that moment, Anya did not know that her question had cracked something deep inside him. She only knew that for the first time in a long while, someone was truly seeing her. She stood there, hungry, scared, and hopeful, not knowing that this single moment would change both their lives forever. The moment the words left the little girl's mouth, the world around them seemed to slow down. The city noise faded into a distant hum, and the man stood frozen, staring at her as if time itself had stopped. Daniel had heard many voices in his life, loud boardroom arguments, fake compliments, angry demands. But no voice had ever shaken him like this one. It was not the hunger in her tone that hurt the most. It was the word daddy. No one had called him that before. Not in his entire life. He had never been a father, never even allowed himself to imagine being one. That single word slipped past every wall he had built around his heart. The girl stood there, small and fragile, her eyes filled with fear and hope fighting each other. Daniel noticed how thin her arms were, how her feet were covered in dust, how her clothes looked too big and too old for her body. These details rushed in his mind all at once, and suddenly he could not look away. People walked past them, some stared, some pretended not to see, a few shook their heads, judging silently. But Daniel remained still, his heart beat loudly in his chest. Something inside him was breaking, something he had kept locked away for years. For a brief moment, his mind searched for excuses. He could give her money and leave. That would be easy. That was what people like him usually did. Charity without connection, kindness without responsibility. But the girl had not asked for money. She had asked for food. And more than that, she had asked to eat with him. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked down at her and saw himself as a child, standing in empty rooms, wishing someone would stay, wishing someone would choose him. "Are you hungry?" he finally asked. His voice sounded unfamiliar, softer than he expected. The girl nodded quickly, afraid that speaking again might break the moment. Her stomach growled quietly, betraying her. Her face turned red with embarrassment. Daniel felt a sharp pain in his chest. He did not know why this affected him so deeply. He had seen hunger before, he had lived it once, but this was different. This was right in front of him, breathing, waiting, trusting. He looked back at the restaurant door behind him, then at the girl again. The choice stood clearly between two paths: walk away and return to his silent world, or step forward into something uncertain and real. Without thinking any further, Daniel opened the restaurant door again. The warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. He held the door open and looked at the girl. "Come," he said simply. She hesitated. Fear flashed across her face. Places like this were not meant for children like her. She had been chased away before, shouted at, humiliated. Her feet remained stuck to the ground. "It's okay," Daniel said gently. "You're with me." Those words felt heavy and powerful, even to him. The girl slowly stepped inside, clutching the edge of her dress like it was armor. The restaurant went quiet. Conversation slowed. Eyes turned toward them. A well-dressed man and a street child did not belong together in this space. Whispers floated through the air. Judgment sat on many faces. Daniel felt their stares but did not care. For the first time in years, he did not care what anyone thought. He pulled out a chair for the girl and gestured for her to sit. She sat carefully, as if afraid the chair might disappear. Her eyes moved quickly over the table. The plates, the lights, the smell of food made her dizzy. A waiter approached, confused and uncomfortable. Daniel met his eyes calmly. "She will eat with me," Daniel said firmly. There was no anger in his voice, only certainty. When the menu arrived, the girl stared at it like it was written in another language. Daniel noticed this and gently asked what she liked to eat. "Anything," she whispered. Daniel ordered food, more than he planned, not because he wanted to show wealth, but because he wanted her to feel safe, to feel that there would be enough. As the food arrived, the girl's hands trembled. She waited, looking at Daniel, unsure if she was allowed to start. He smiled slightly and nodded. "You can eat." She took her first bite slowly, then another. Tears filled her eyes as she chewed. She tried to hide them, but Daniel saw. In that moment, Daniel realized something important. His heart had not shattered because of her question. It had shattered because it had been empty for too long. And this small, hungry girl had found the crack. The girl ate slowly, not because she was not hungry, but because she was afraid the food might disappear if she rushed, afraid someone would suddenly tell her to leave. Each bite was careful, almost respectful, like she was handling something precious. Daniel watched her quietly. Every movement told a story he did not need words to understand. The way she kept glancing around the restaurant, the way her shoulders stayed tense, the way she tried not to make a mess, all of it showed a child who had learned to survive by staying small and invisible. When the waiter returned with more dishes, the girl froze, her eyes widened, and she shook her head quickly. "No more," she whispered. "I'm okay." Daniel understood immediately. She was not refusing because she was full. She was refusing because she did not want to be a burden. The realization hit him hard, harder than hunger ever had. "It's okay," Daniel said gently. "This is for you." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Trust came hard to her, but something in his voice felt safe. As she continued eating, Daniel felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. It was unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and yet calming. He realized he had never shared a meal like this before. Not with gratitude, not with meaning, Across the room, people whispered. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Others watched with curiosity. A few smiled quietly, but Daniel no longer noticed them. His attention stayed on the girl across from him. When she finally pushed her plate away, her eyes were brighter, her face less tense. For the first time that evening, she smiled. It was small, shy, and unsure, but it was real. "Thank you," she said softly. Those two words hit Daniel harder than any praise he had received in his career. They were honest, unpolished, and deeply human. He nodded, unsure of how to respond. He had signed contracts worth millions, yet this simple moment left him speechless. They sat in silence for a moment, not an awkward silence, but a gentle one, the kind that felt shared. "Where do you live?" Daniel asked carefully, not wanting to scare her. The girl looked down at her hands, picking at her fingers. "Here and there," she replied. Her voice was calm, but the words carried weight. Daniel felt a tightness in his throat. He did not ask further. He did not need details to understand what that meant. After a while, he paid the bill and stood up. The girl followed his movement quickly, fear returning to her eyes. This was usually the moment when kindness ended. Outside, the night air was cooler. The street looked harsher now that she was full. The girl stood close to Daniel, unsure of what came next. "Will you leave me here?" she asked quietly. The question was simple, but it carried a history of abandonment. Daniel looked down at her and felt something settle inside him, something firm and clear. "No," he said, surprising even himself. The girl's eyes widened. "I won't," he repeated, more confidently this time. He did not know exactly what he meant by that yet, only that he could not walk away now, not after seeing her smile, not after feeling his own heart wake up. They walked a short distance together, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. The girl talked a little about small things where she liked to sit during the day, which places felt safer. Daniel listened, really listened for the first time in years. When they reached a quiet corner, Daniel stopped. He knew he had to make a decision, one that could not be undone easily. "Would you like to stay somewhere warm tonight?" he asked gently. The girl looked at him carefully, searching his face for lies. Then she nodded slowly. In that moment, Daniel understood that this was no longer just about helping a hungry child. It was about choosing connection over comfort, responsibility over distance. The meal had fed her body, but it had fed his soul in a way he never expected, and deep inside, he knew that his life had already changed, even if the world outside looked the same. They sat in the car quietly as the city lights passed by outside the window. The girl kept her hands folded in her lap, looking around with wide, careful eyes. Everything felt new to her, the soft seat, the warmth, the quiet hum of the engine. She had never been inside a car like this before. Daniel glanced at her from time to time, noticing how she flinched at sudden sounds, how she stayed alert even while sitting still. It reminded him of someone who had learned that safety could disappear at any moment. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then answered, "Anya." Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. "It's a nice name," Daniel said, and for the first time that night, he smiled without effort. Anya looked out the window again, then asked quietly, "What's your name?" "Daniel," he replied. She nodded slowly, repeating it in her head. Names mattered to her. They meant someone cared enough to ask. The car stopped near a small, clean building, not fancy, not cold, but safe. Warm light shone from the windows. Anya's eyes widened. "Is this a hospital?" she asked nervously. "No," Daniel said gently. "It's a place where you can rest." She followed him inside, holding onto the edge of his coat for courage. The smell of clean sheets and warm food filled the air. It was overwhelming, almost too much. Inside, a kind woman greeted them. Daniel spoke to her quietly, arranging a room for the night. Anya watched their faces, trying to understand what was happening. Trust still felt dangerous. When they reached the room, Anya stood near the door, unsure if she was allowed to step inside. Daniel noticed and said softly, "You can go in." She sat on the bed carefully, touching the blanket like it might vanish. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. Daniel sat across from her, his hands resting on his knees. He felt a strange tightness in his chest. The room was warm, but memories suddenly felt cold. My mother used to sing to me, Anya said suddenly. Her voice trembled slightly when I was scared. Daniel looked at her, surprised. Do you remember her? Anya nodded, a little. She paused, then added, she said she would come back. Silence filled the room, heavy and honest. Daniel felt something crack inside him. Memories he had buried for years began to surface. His own mother's face, tired but smiling. Her promise that things would be okay. A promise that never came true. I lost my parents too, Daniel said quietly. The words surprised him. He had never said them out loud like this before. Anya looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, she did not see a rich man. She saw someone who understood pain. Did you feel alone? She asked. Daniel nodded slowly. For a very long time. Anya shifted closer, not touching him, just close enough to feel presence. I don't like being alone, she said. Neither do I, Daniel thought, but he did not say it. That night, as Anya slept curled under the blanket, Daniel sat nearby. Watching her chest rise and fall, he felt something unfamiliar but powerful. Responsibility, not the kind that came with money, but the kind that came with care. He realized then that giving her a bed for one night was not enough. He had seen too much, felt too much. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. Anya woke slowly, confused at first, then smiling when she remembered where she was. Daniel brought her breakfast. She ate with less fear this time, though she still saved a piece of bread in her pocket, just in case. When she finished, she looked at him seriously. Will you make me go back? She asked. Daniel felt his heart tighten. He understood what she meant, the streets, the cold, the hunger. No, he said firmly, I won't. Anya studied his face, searching for truth. Then she nodded, trusting him. In that moment, Daniel knew there was no turning back. Their past pain had met, and from it, something new was beginning to grow, something fragile, something real, something that felt like hope. Morning came quietly, not with alarms or rushing footsteps, but with soft light filling the room. Anya sat on the edge of the bed, swinging her feet slowly. She was awake before Daniel, watching the window like it might take this moment away. When Daniel finally opened his eyes, he saw her sitting there, small and still, waiting, not demanding anything, not asking for more, just waiting. Good morning, he said softly. Anya smiled, a little unsure. Good morning, she replied. Her voice sounded lighter than before. They ate breakfast together. The room felt different now, less like a shelter and more like a beginning. Anya talked a little about simple things, birds she liked to watch, places where the sun felt warm. Daniel listened closely. Every word felt important. After breakfast, Daniel made a phone call. He stepped outside, speaking quietly, his face serious. When he returned, Anya looked at him nervously. Am I in trouble? She asked. No, Daniel said quickly, kneeling to her level. I'm trying to help you. She nodded, though fear still lived in her eyes. She had learned that help often came with conditions. They drove again, this time to a place filled with laughter and voices. Children ran across a yard, some playing, some reading, some eating together. Anya froze at the gate, gripping Daniel's hand tightly. This is a children's home, Daniel explained. You can stay here for now. Anya shook her head, panic flashing across her face. Don't leave me, she whispered. Daniel felt the weight of her fear settle on his chest. He realized then that this was the moment where many people stepped away, leaving responsibility to others, calling it kindness. I won't leave, he said firmly. I promise. Inside, the caretakers welcomed them warmly. They spoke gently to Anya, offering her toys, food, and space, but she stayed close to Daniel. Her world had become very small, and he was now the center of it. As the day passed, Daniel watched her interact with other children. At first, she stayed quiet. Then slowly, she joined them, laughing softly, running carefully, still holding fear but also curiosity. Daniel sat nearby, feeling something heavy and beautiful at the same time. He realized that helping her meant changing his own life. There would be questions, paperwork, responsibility, judgment, and fear, his own fear. That evening, he sat with the head caretaker, discussing long-term care, education, safety. Daniel listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept looking toward the yard, where Anya sat drawing pictures in the dirt. "What happens if I don't walk away?" he asked quietly. The caretaker looked at him carefully. "Then her life changes," she said, "and so does yours." The truth of those words hit him deeply. Later, Daniel sat beside Anya under a tree, the sky turning orange above them. "Will I come back with you?" she asked. Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment, the choice that could not be undone. "Yes," he said slowly, "but things will be different." She tilted her head, confused. "I want to take care of you," Daniel continued. "Not just for today." Anya's eyes widened. Tears filled them, but did not fall. "Forever," she whispered, afraid to hope. Daniel nodded, his voice steady. "As long as you want me to." She leaned into him, resting her head against his side, not hugging, just trusting. That simple weight felt heavier than all his success, and more meaningful. That night, as Daniel drove home, he realized something clear and powerful. This was no longer an act of charity. It was a commitment, a decision to let someone matter more than comfort. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt rich in a way money had never given him. Months passed quietly, yet profoundly. Anya's small life began to bloom like a flower under careful sunlight. Each morning she woke with curiosity instead of fear. Her laughter, once rare and hidden, started to echo softly around the places Daniel had introduced her to. Daniel watched her carefully, noticing the small changes, the way she reached for a book without hesitation, the way she shared food with other children, the way she smiled without looking over her shoulder. It was subtle at first, but undeniable. She was no longer only surviving. She was living. At the same time, Daniel felt changes within himself. His mornings no longer started with emptiness. He found himself thinking about her before meetings, before decisions, even before sleep. He found joy in watching her take small steps forward, and he realized that for the first time in years, he wanted to be present in someone's life, truly present. One afternoon, they walked together in a quiet park. The sunlight painted golden patterns on the pavement. Anya skipped slightly, holding Daniel's hand. Her small confidence radiated from her in ways he had never expected. "You're smiling," she said suddenly, looking up at him. Daniel looked down at her, surprised. I think I am," he admitted. "You're happy now," she said, nodding seriously, as if she had measured it. "Yes," Daniel whispered, realizing it was true. He had not felt this happiness in years. Not the kind that came from money or success, but the kind that comes from connection, from trust, from caring for someone who depends on you. Their days became routines filled with small joys. Daniel helping her with reading, teaching her about the world beyond the streets. Anya teaching him patience, teaching him wonder, teaching him to notice things he had ignored for decades. They explored markets, parks, libraries, even small cafes, where she would timidly try food she had never imagined, her laughter often drawing smiles from strangers. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Anya sat on the balcony, her knees hugged to her chest. "Do you ever feel scared?" she asked quietly. Daniel sat beside her, resting his hand on hers. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I feel braver now because I have you." She turned to him, eyes wide. "I have you too," she whispered, her voice carrying more certainty than it ever had. Time passed, and Daniel realized the truth of what had happened between them. The girl he had rescued had saved him too, rescued him from a life of silence and loneliness, showing him the power of trust, hope, and love. He began to see the world differently, not as a place to win or conquer, but as a place to care, to connect, to understand. The wealth he had once measured in money and property now felt empty compared to the richness of these moments. These small, fragile, unforgettable moments with Anya. And Anya began to dream, something she had not allowed herself to do before. She dreamed of going to school, of learning to read stories on her own, of having friends who cared. She dreamed of a life where fear was no longer her shadow. Daniel quietly supported her, not by forcing change, but by giving her tools, safety, and encouragement He learned to celebrate her courage instead of his own, to listen more than he spoke, to follow her pace, and yet guide her when needed. One rainy afternoon, as they ran through puddles together, Anya laughed loudly, spinning around in the rain. Daniel watched, his heart swelling with warmth, and he thought, this is what life should feel like: messy, unpredictable, and beautiful. That night, as they sat together in quiet, Anya leaned against him, softly whispering, "Thank you, Daddy." Daniel held her close, understanding fully now that these words were not just about food or shelter. They were about trust, love, and hope. And he realized that her small heart had changed his life completely, shattered old walls, healed old wounds, and rebuilt a new world inside him. He had once thought that wealth was measured by money, by power, by what he could buy. But now he knew that true wealth was measured in laughter, trust, and the chance to save a life, and in doing so, find your own. The morning sunlight filled the small room, casting warm golden patterns across the floor. Anya woke up slowly, stretching her arms and looking around. She no longer felt fear when she opened her eyes. She had a bed, a home, and someone who stayed, someone who truly cared. Daniel sat nearby, sipping his coffee quietly, watching her with a soft smile. He had learned to enjoy these small moments, the calm before the world demanded attention. This morning felt different, though, full of unspoken understanding, a sense of completion that he had never known before. "Good morning," Anya said softly, her voice full of a lightness that had once seemed impossible. "Good morning, Anya," Daniel replied, smiling genuinely. The way she said his name, without fear, without hesitation, made something warm bloom inside him. She climbed onto his lap, curling up slightly. "I'm happy," she whispered, her words simple but heavy with meaning. Daniel hugged her gently. "Me too," he said, "more than you can imagine." It had been months since the first day they had met, yet it felt like a lifetime had passed, a lifetime of change, healing, and trust. Daniel had not only given her safety, food, and shelter, but she had given him something priceless: love without conditions, connection without demands, a reminder that life was meant to be felt and shared. They spent the day walking slowly through the park, the air crisp with early autumn. Leaves swirled around them as Anya laughed freely, spinning, chasing, and sometimes falling into Daniel's arms. Each time she fell, he caught her, not just physically, but emotionally, holding her steady while she learned to trust the world again. "Do you remember the first time you called me Daddy?" Daniel asked quietly, his voice filled with warmth and wonder. Anya looked at him, her eyes wide. "I didn't know what it meant," she said, "but I knew you were safe." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of those words. It was true. They had both been lost in their own ways, both alone, both afraid, and yet a single moment, a single word, had changed everything. They arrived at a small school nearby, where Anya would finally begin her formal education. She hesitated at the gate for a moment, glancing back at Daniel. "I'll be right here," he said, "always." She nodded and stepped forward, confident now, not because fear had disappeared, but because trust had replaced it. Daniel watched her disappear into the classroom, feeling a strange mix of pride and longing. He realized that his life had changed more than hers, that rescuing her had rescued him too, from loneliness, from silence, from a life built only on wealth without meaning. When the final bell rang, Anya ran into his arms, laughing, her school bag bouncing on her back. "Daddy, I learned so much today," she exclaimed, and he laughed with her, feeling every word, every moment, every heartbeat. That evening, they returned home, and Daniel cooked a simple meal, something he had never done before for himself, let alone for someone else. Anya helped, handing him utensils, learning small lessons about life and care, and as they ate together, he noticed the simple truth that had been missing in his life. Family was not about blood, not about status, not about money. It was about love, trust, and presence. And in that moment, he knew they were a family, in the truest sense, built on choice, care, and heart. Later, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Anya rested her head against him and whispered softly, "Thank you for staying." Daniel held her close, his heart full. "Thank you for trusting me," he replied. They watched the sun dip below the horizon together. Two souls who had found each other in a chaotic world. One small question had broken the walls of a lonely heart, and in doing so, had built a new life for both of them. And as night fell, Anya slept peacefully beside him, safe, loved, and hopeful, while Daniel realized something profound. True wealth was never in money, power, or possessions. It was in the courage to care, to trust, and to love without limits. The street girl's question had shattered his heart, but in the ruins, it had planted something stronger, something unbreakable, something eternal. And in that they both found a home, not built from bricks, but from hearts, hope, and humanity.